Welcome back to the Brits Don't Jump podcast. Today we've got a very special episode for you. We're moving on to an NBA special. And naturally, because I'm a Sixers fan and I'm very selfish, we're going to start with an Eastern Conference preview. And I couldn't think of anyone better to join us than the UK 76ers ex-account. Ben, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm really good. Thank you for that lovely introduction. That's very, very kind of you. I'm really happy to be on.
No, I'm buzzing to have you. Like I say, I couldn't think of anyone else. And I said before the podcast, if I'm going to do an Eastern Conference preview, I want to suffer with a fellow 76ers fan. It's only fair to make two people suffer, I think.
Yeah, you got to have that little cleanse before the season starts, and then it goes again. That suffering, that cycle. Don't know why we put ourselves through it, but here we are again.
Well, that leads us nicely to my first question, to be honest with you. Before we get into the 76ers, I'll ask you, how did you get cursed with supporting the franchise? What made you pick out of because it would be so easy to go with Lakers, the Celtics, like the obvious teams. What made you choose the Philadelphia 76ers?
So I got into basketball in 2018. I was studying out in the States in Texas, so that naturally would make you think, right, the Spurs or the Rockets or the Mavs. Which, to be honest, even if I went with any of them, I'd still be going through an awful lot of pain, I guess. But, with the Spurs, at least, there's certainly a promising future on the horizon. But I digress. Anyway, I wasn't overly interested in it. I've always been, whilst I like my football, I've always been I played rugby. Therefore, I thought I'd gravitate towards the NFL and college football whilst I was over there. But I went and watched a basketball game because I love sport. And that was when I was in Philadelphia, because I studied politics, and Philadelphia's got jam-packed full of political history. So I went there for a weekend and did a bit of traveling. So I went all over. Philadelphia was one of the first cities I went to, and the Sixers were playing at home to the Hornets on a random March evening. So it's $20 a ticket. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll head down. Really enjoyed myself. And because it's on every other day, I was then, from that moment until now, I guess, checking the scores, watching the game, sticking it on in the background whilst I was working. Then when I came back to England, I just kept in touch with it. And then we ended up with a Twitter page, ended up with a podcast, ended up with, living and breathing it to the same extent that I do with my English football team here, and which I never ever thought would happen to me, because I get enough pain and suffering supporting Southampton as is, and I've compounded that with the Philadelphia 76ers. So it's not been ideal, but no, love it. Absolutely love it.
What were the fans like when you visited the city? Did they kind of catch your attention a bit? Because they seem like they're quite an emotional, I know for a fact they're an emotional set of people. Is that how they came across in person as well?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, in that Hornets game, because it was pretty run-of-the-mill, I think it was at the time where the Hornets' best player was like Kemba, and their second best player in that squad was like Dwight Howard when he was doing his little tour of all the NBA teams towards the latter stages. So they were pretty easy to walk over. But then I went back year before last, and we went to my girlfriend and I. So I took my girlfriend for the first time, and we went to Oklahoma City Thunder at the Wells Fargo. And that was pretty, special in all the best ways. But it was intense, and you sort of live every play, because that went down to the last minute. And it's such a volatility emotion-wise. You're going from ecstasy to we've lost the game. And I think I recall like Isaiah Joe hitting a three against us, and like I know the storyline, but somehow we managed to bring it back and win. Easily one of the best experiences of my life. To be able to share that as well with my girlfriend was equally as special, because that was her first game. But yeah, they just get involved, and I think that's what's so nice. I'm not sure about you, if you're a football person here as well.
Yeah,
they're the closest thing to, I would say, like what a British fan is like, and I really like that. It's not sanitized. It's not, when you go to some American sports and it's all about just like getting on the big screen, and it's, for me, I don't really like that stuff. I like, I'm here for the sport. I'm here to support my team, and I'm here to make sure that they do their best to win.
yeah.
And I feel like in Philadelphia, they get that. Blue collar, they get behind that. It's not about all the stupid nonsense to one side that you may get on those more coastal teams, out west. It's about just making sure you support the team, and there's no nonsense in between all of that. So they're thinking they're a breath of fresh air throughout, and they're really welcoming. As soon as they heard the accent, or they're like, what are you doing here? And then you tell them your story, and you're like, oh, that's amazing. Hope you have a great time. And they're so accommodating.
See, you've hit the nail on the head there. For me, that's literally the same reason I picked them, because I'm a Sunderland fan. So again, suffering there as well. My dad cursed us with that one, unfortunately, but it's like you can relate to the fans a bit. Like you say, it's British fans, especially Sunderland fans. It's like when things are going well, you're about to win a championship and you're buzzing. But when things are low, you want the board out. You want the manager sacked. The team's terrible. Do you know what like? It just
Yeah.
relates to you, doesn't it? It's exactly why I picked it with the Eagles as well. You see it every week. We've lost one game. We're 4-1. It's all up in the air. I want everyone sacked already.
Well, the interesting thing about that is I'm a Broncos fan, so there's a reason behind that. But obviously, I'm mates with loads of Eagles fans, so I was giving it the big one and getting called every name under the sun in between. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the City is most in line with, I think, most British football fans, which is why I'm surprised almost they don't have more fans here, to be honest. I understand there's always the allure of the Heat, the Lakers, like you said, the Celtics. But when you consider most basketball fans probably also have a football team and probably are semi-regularly going to football games, it makes the most sense to actually be in line with the Philadelphia fans, despite the fact that they get dogs abuse, which I think is a lot of the time quite unfair. But yeah, top set group of fans, and I wouldn't want to be with any other team, to be honest.
You're going to have to give us some tips about how you got your girlfriend there. I've been trying to get my wife over for a couple of years now, and I'll not tell you a response, but the polite version is no.
The big one was we did New York before.
Right. See,
which is a fair compromise because I mean New York's lovely. Hate the basketball team. Love the city. So we flew over for about 3-4 days in New York, 3 days in Philly. But to be fair, she gets behind it. She had a jersey, buys a jersey. It's like she comes to Southampton games with me as well. She loves going to Saints games with me. So she just sort of buys into it all. And I think like initially she was a bit apprehensive about going to sport, but I think then she never really went before she met me. And he was like, actually, this is good fun, providing you win. So that's the problem, is that we never really see too many wins. But when you do, it's brilliant.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. If I'm the same as you, it's winning, and then obviously last season with the Sixers, we didn't get them, see many of them at all. I think it was 25 in the end or something. But then at the end of the season, you tend to celebrate because you're like, oh, there's our lottery pick. Fantastic. We'll keep losing.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I mean, it was so odd because people were saying, well, why are you still keeping in touch with this? Like, because there's still something to play for and it's rather perverse because we as Brits, we don't really get this whole, we're trying to lose. We want this draft pick. And then I tell you what, it was really refreshing. This was the first year I then had to do a fair bit of research into the draft. And I loved it. It was so interesting to see, like, okay, we could get Ace, we could get VJ. What if we, trade down? Because I never really understood this idea of trading down until this year, I think. And it made so much sense to me. It's like, okay, this is why you might actually want a worse draft pick. So it gives you a bit more insight into the nuances of the game that you never previously had. And so I actually quite enjoyed this. And it made me realize the worst team you can be is that purgatory team, like a Chicago Bulls, who are never going to get anywhere in terms of playoffs, but are never terrible enough to get the top draft picks. So, you know, there's some solace to be taken out of being absolutely terrible last season.
Well, I mean, that's the next question. That's what we're moving on to. So we're talking about off-season moves. Eventually, with our third overall pick, we picked VJ Edgecombe. And we're going to talk about our off-season moves, what we think about them. Do we agree with who we've brought in, who we've retained, who's took the player option? When we look at VJ Edgecombe, we've just had a small sample size. We've had the Summer League where he went off a bit. And then the Abu Dhabi games. Personally, I thought it was a mixed performance by him. It seemed like he was forcing shots, but naturally, you know, you're a young lad. You're trying to get points. You try to prove a point. What do you personally think of him from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I think he's dead exciting. It's that sort of springy power that he brings, that athleticism, which it's not really an archetype we ever really have. That just athletes that got a bit of strength, can move, play above the rim potentially as he grows into his role. I think when it came to Abu Dhabi, again, some people, or, you know, the people that are naturally quite cynical, they might say, well, actually, hang on here. He's not really played an efficient game. And this is a wider issue that we've got, is that we don't actually have a point guard, a legitimate facilitator. But also, you haven't got Embiid or even PG, who's providing a little extra gravity for you to play with. The Knicks' game plan was, right, if you guard Maxey well enough and if you guard VJ well enough, you've won the game. There's not too much else you need to do. So perhaps the shots he is going to take is going to be kind of shot chucky, as it were. And likewise, he's going to be defended quite harshly against a solid defense. So I've been really, really happy with what I've seen. Summer League, I think you've got to take always with a pinch of salt. He had a good game in the Summer League. I think it was the first one, actually. He looked really, really strong. And I think he's in a nice position whereby we don't need to rely on him too much.
Yeah.
I shouldn't think it will give him a couple, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a game, maybe more, maybe less. Maybe he starts a couple later on in the season, just as we need to rotate in and out. I was really, really happy with what I saw. My worries are certainly elsewhere rather than with him, and I think he'll develop really, really nicely. And hopefully, if we're being quite selfish about what we need, we could maybe develop him into someone who can be a bit more reminiscent of like an Oladipo with the defensive aspect in the backcourt, because that is somewhere where we're lacking. But I think alternatively, if he landed elsewhere, there's no reason why he couldn't be an all-star level player. But I just don't think we'll give him the time to necessarily develop like that. I think his development timeline's going to be slightly different with us.
Yeah, I think it all depends on injuries as well, doesn't it? Like over the years, we've had a really, really bad injury record, so that's going to play a part. Obviously, McCain's picked up another injury, but I think what I like about Edgecombe is he's got a bit of everything. I couldn't believe it in the I think it was the first game against the Knicks. He threw a lob up for Bona and he just puts it down straight away. And I'm like, I didn't know you had that side of your game. And like you say, he can defend, he can grab rebounds. He's got a bit of playmaking, he can score, so he can be whatever we need this year, which makes him a bit more interesting in my eyes. And maybe that does get him a few more minutes, because if you look at the kinds of Kelly Oubre Jr., and I would love to know your opinion on him, because personally, I don't mind Oubre Jr. if he's playing off ball.
Yeah.
If he's handling the ball and he's taking shots, I'm like, what I would do? It was out of necessity, obviously, but when I see someone shooting 25% from 3-point range, I'm getting a little bit worried. So, with Kelly Oubre Jr., who've gone for another year, what do you think of him? Where does he fit into this roster?
It's a real hard one, because there's one part of me that's just like, right, you got the Oubre and Drummond contracts, package them up, send them elsewhere, try and see if you can get a legit 4. It's not, I think, Watford's bad one. We'll touch on him, but come on. We should probably look for something a bit better. But if we're being honest and we think back about all the things we criticize players for with regards to their attitude and their commitment and their application, none of those criticisms you could ever lodge at him. But simultaneously, he's getting dogs abuse, and he did call it out. He was just like, well, hang on a bit. I'm the one that's actually turned up regularly and given it my all. And I think, all you can say is he has absolutely done that. The problem is he does stupid things, like he'll bring the ball up and step into an off the dribble 3 at the top of the key with about 20 seconds left on the shot clock. It's like, that's not your game. But, if we play him off ball, like you were suggesting, and we have him cutting to the rim and we have him at the end of alley-oops potentially, that's where you want him, doing the simple things. And he can defend pretty well because he works hard. So I do like him. There was a time where I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind him maybe on my jerseys. This idea that I want him completely gone would perhaps be a bit hyperbolic, but yeah, I think it's more so the reason he's been getting so much criticism is because of the frustration elsewhere. And naturally, once you find the frustration lodged towards the owner or lodged towards the GM or the coach or PG, it sort of manifests itself elsewhere. And you find that to be true of almost anybody, is that because people have been so fed up, they've even been criticizing Embiid. Yeah. And that is just where we're at. The franchise, dare I say it, has become at times poisonous. And I don't think that's because the fans are poisonous, as so many people would like to label. It's that actually, if you look at this as a franchise, it's ran terribly. It's ran really, really poorly.
Well, if that's kind of a good point you bring up, it is ran poorly, and I think that's where the frustration stems from. Because if you look at our roster, if we're talking start of last season, kept Oubre, everyone was buzzing because by the end of the year, he actually did show he can be a really good perimeter defender if he's not touching the ball. And I really like him. I don't want him to go anywhere yet unless you can package him in a deal where you're going to fill some of our gaps. But you're looking to hand it, and I love Embiid, and I've got no problem against him being injured because I think he's played through countless injuries. I don't think he's one of these people that's ducking games, but to hand him the contract you have with his injury record, that's where I take my issue. The same with Paul George. Again, like him, I do think when he plays, he tries. I just think he was trying to figure out where his place was in that team, behind Maxey, behind Embiid. Again, injury prone. That's where my issue comes. And then you look at Kyle Lowry and Drummond. They've picked up the player option this year. What do you think about that? Because that's another 2 players that, yes, they take a minimum salary, but is that really what you need on your roster right now? Potentially Drummond, maybe. But you look at their injury record. Is that just adding fuel to the fire?
I'll start with Drummond because I think that's the easiest one to take. Because Bona's improving so much, I think Drummond is one of those ones where we'll keep hold of him for now. and he could actually end up being our third choice centre. But you got to remember as well, 2-3 years ago, Drummond was everyone was crying out for him. He's like best backup we've had for Embiid, and he wasn't brought here to play starter minutes. He was brought here to play backup minutes. So when he fouls out and he frustrates everyone because he hasn't really got an offensive game, you don't notice that because when he was here previously, he didn't have the minutes to express those issues. So I'm happy to give him another go. He's another one of those players I'm like, you know what, I actually really liked him. He's got a bit of goodwill. We'll see how we go with him. And Larry is an interesting one because, again, I've got a lot of nice memories of times where he's used his nous and used his ability to not win us games single-handedly, but, impact them. But he's old, and it's as simple as that. And the problem is it feels almost quite like nepotism that he got that role back. Now, we never know the ins and outs of how deals are struck because there are so many moving pieces. In my head, I'm looking at, we signed Kyle Lowry, and that was probably early-ish July we signed him. And only recently has Malcolm Brogdon been brought in by the Knicks. And I know New York has a different sort of allure than Philadelphia does, and that has to play a part somewhere here. But why on earth are we not going after someone like Malcolm Brogdon, who fits that perfectly? He's a point guard, he can facilitate, but also he's happy to play off of someone like Maxey because inevitably we're going to want to give him the ball more. He can even play off McCain, and he just doesn't argue. He'll just do it. He's a really good team player. That, for me, is the most prototypical person we would need for this squad. Guy that could be a starter in the 1 or the 2. He can also be a 6th man. So, look, it's not Brogdon or Lowry. I'm sure there are other people, is basically my point here. And it felt like we were very quick to leap towards someone who we know Nick Nurse has an awful lot of time for. And I get why he has time for him, but let's be real. We're not here for sentiment. We're here to try and win a title ultimately. And time is running out. And now you've brought in a 6-foot fella, just about 6 foot. That's what, nearing 40?
Yeah. I think my problem with it mainly is it's not necessarily the Lowry Steen signing. I think it's the fact we then went for Gordon. And I'm like, you've just got to kind of pick one of two. Look, you do need veterans there and you need veteran presence, but to say you need both of them and they need to be in the backcourt, to me, doesn't make that much sense because we've mentioned it earlier. There's other holes. There's other holes in the roster. And for me, it's playmaking. And you've mentioned that. And I've said for 2 years now, there's a guard out there who I personally would love to have. And it's not because he's tremendous, but he's happy to be the playmaker. And that was Tyus Jones. I've seen him pick up, I think.
That's a great shout.
Now, I can't for the life of us remember if he's went to Orlando or no, he hasn't. It's somewhere like that in the Eastern Conference, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think it does ring a bell.
But for me, it's just, you could let him play a point, let him distribute the ball. Obviously, we've got Grimes, we've got Edgecombe, we've got McCain now, and then let Maxey just do his thing. Because I feel like there's too much pressure on Maxey, who is still, he's essentially developing in my eyes. I don't know what what your opinion is of Maxey.
I think he's a 2. I don't see him as a 1. Someone, people who in our community who have been watching the Sixers far longer than me, and indeed podcasters who are watching far longer than me, they compare it to when it was the 2001 run with AI. AI obviously played the 2, but he had Eric Snow next to him who could just be a point guard. And I think that's what we need. We need Maxey can be our AI, as it were, whereby he is still having a lot of usage, but he just needs someone next to him who can still facilitate. I mean, I've always said, Tyus Jones is a great shout. I've always felt like, and this is probably not possible just because of the timeline difference in contracts, but Lonzo Ball would have been the perfect archetype, that height, 3-point shooting, defending, happy to defer to other people, and playmaking. That's the perfect archetype for me. And we had a chat in one of our group chats. I'll be interested to see your opinion, but we're like, would you take a flyer on like Russell Westbrook and just see what happens? I don't know what I think, but like that's where we're at really now.
So I actually wrote an article about it, and I didn't agree with it. All right. I said straight away in my head, I was like, Russell Westbrook. And I don't actually, obviously, we don't know him personally, and everything is rumors. You don't know until you're in that room what happens. And I was writing this article, and I was looking at his stats, and I was like, my God, this is exactly what we need. And I was starting to talk myself into it. In the end, I decided, yes, I would have him. and it goes against every single Philadelphia 76er fan, maybe every NBA fan. But I look at it, and if you can get him on a decent salary, all right, that's where your problem might lie, getting him on a decent salary. But to me, if you've got a guard who can rebound, who can assist, and did he have a great year in Denver? Not really, but he didn't have a bad one. So he's got experience of playing with a big that's going to be your main man. So when Embiid, hopefully, fingers crossed, comes back fully fit, it takes a bit of rebounding off Embiid. You've got someone who's happy to assist him, who can score around him. So I actually hate to say it, but I would take him. What was it? I don't think you give an answer there. What did you? Oh, you think?
I sort of like, you know what? I'm happy to watch it sort of behind closed doors, just like through my fingers, just see what happens. It's like a fun experiment, but you can probably expect it to go pear shaped. But like, why not? The thing is, if we're thinking about it from a business perspective, it would get bums in seats.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what we want. I don't care how profitable the Sixers are ultimately, but like it would be interesting. People would be like, okay, let's just see how we go. But, since, I think it was the Wizards when he was last semi-decent, since his time in the Wizards, no one's ever really been able to properly utilize him. But Denver have probably been the best ones.
Yeah.
But equally, Denver are one of the most intelligent teams schematically, and we're probably one of the most unintelligent teams schematically. So, we'll just have to see how that would work.
Right, I'm about to get super unprofessional here because I have not turned on this kitchen light, all right? So, guys, bear with us. There we go. You can see me face now. Not that that's a good thing. I should have probably kept it in the dark, but that'll either get cut or we'll see what happens. I might just keep it in because why not? It makes it interesting, doesn't it? So, back to the Sixers. We've talked about Embiid and his injuries. And for me, I think we will see more of him this year than we did last year. I think that's kind of inevitable. When we see him, we don't know, and there's always a radio silence, which that's what kind of frustrates us. Is I would rather be told he's going to be out rather than guessing and waiting and then seeing him back for 2 weeks and then he's gone for 2 weeks and then he picks up a suspension for pushing a reporter or whatever he's done this time. But if worst case scenario, if we see Embiid out for a long period of the season, do you think now after last year Tyrese Maxey can step into his shoes and be the main guy on the roster?
Well, I think he'll have to be, but I don't think he can. He can be the main guy on the roster because, someone has to be. But I think as the main guy, he can only really lead you to maybe the playoffs. I think Maxey's peak is, and what I predict to be his peak at least, will be a very good second option, maybe a third option. I think sometimes it's very easy for him to get tunnel vision. I don't think he's got the poise to go and say, right, I've got this game, I've won it. Because I feel there have been some occasions, and I think back to when we played the Heat on a couple of frequent times, they figure out how to guard him, and then he starts shot chucking. And you love the bloke, but sometimes he lacks the dynamism in his game to really start adapting and thinking, right, here's what they're throwing at me. How exactly am I going to change to ensure that I can still get to where I need to get to? Instead, what will happen is that he'll take a step back three, a wild step back three at that, and it will brick off, and then we'll go on a bit of a barren spell trying to, get these hero ball points. So he'll grow into something decent, absolutely, like all-star level, of course. But, if you're being real, how many people in the NBA are seriously capable of being the best person on the championship team?
Yeah.
If we're being honest, it's probably like 5 people, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult place to be in. But he is a best player on a playoff team, but not a best player on a serious contending team.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it with the second option, because if he's got Embiid next to him, Maxey can be fantastic. And I think tunnel vision is the best way to describe it, because I feel like for some reason he put all, well, obviously why? Because you've got Paul George and Embiid out, but it kind of felt like he had to be that guy last year and he had to throw shots up, and it got to the point as well where I think he's best when I know he doesn't get as many fouls as he should, but when he's driving inside at the basket, using his floater game, getting layups, that's where I feel like he's best, and he can shoot 3 points, but like you say, sometimes it seems like he gets a player in ISO and he's been trapped a couple of times and then he just puts one up and you're like, I think you're better than that. So I think if we say a change of decision making, he could definitely be a really good second option, but until we see it, you just don't know, do you? With it, if Embiid's going to be out, how can you ever assess what Maxey is?
Yeah, and you know, you think about when we think about Maxi, we often think about what Maxi looks like with Embiid, not what Maxi looks like without Embiid. And you fail to appreciate, again, we talked about it earlier, the gravity that he provides. That a shot that was previously you can be set for and have, I don't know, 2 or 3 seconds to take now becomes a shot that you only have a second and a half to take. And it's that those little things which we can't fully quantify yet because we need to see what life would be like without Embiid, full stop. I mean, of course, we can take snippets of times when he's not been playing, but it's very difficult to see what this team would look like. But then again, you could also then say, well, actually, fine, we won't have Embiid, but we would have VJ, but we would have Jared McCain. So we would have PG. Maybe PG comes back to just being a 22 points per game scorer on something close to 50, 40, 90. And you know what? That's not entirely inconceivable. So there's a lot of variables that could mean that he's going to do better. And you know, indeed, that he could do worse. But you like to think of the former in those regards.
Yeah, well, that's a nice segue to our next question, because I guess this question's kind of split into two. When it comes to the 76ers, you've got hypotheticals and you've got reality. So let's start with hypotheticals. If this roster's healthy, what is the ceiling?
If everyone stays healthy
If
for the whole
everyone
season.
stays healthy for the majority, look, we know they're going to pick up injuries, but for the majority of the season and then the fit for the playoffs, how far does this Sixers team go?
Oh, I genuinely think if we stay healthy and let's assume Embiid is back to 28 points per game, let's say, and Paul George gets to 22 and Maxi's in around that 22 region and Jared McCain's 18 to 20. That team I genuinely think that team could win a title. And that's what makes it so frustrating because that's not outlandish. I think most NBA fans would say if you put that hypothetical in front of them, yeah, that team could. But there will be a very huge but that immediately follows any statement made as such, which is, but they won't.
Yeah, which is where the reality
Of,
side of the question
yeah,
comes into it. So reality, what do you actually think the Sixers look like?
I would put us towards, I think a good season would be 5th seed, 6th seed, around there. That's what I want. Bare minimum. Because the thing is, when you say make the play, and you're sort of like, you get to the point, it's like, why? What's the point? But because of how, again, the volatility of who we are, we could make the play in without Embiid, win the play in, get Embiid back, and then get quite far. So actually, the pieces can start to drop all of a sudden, and then we can get a very nice run together. So I guess the minimum expectancy has to be the play in, and I think we could easily get the 5th or 6th seed if things go our way. If everything falls into place for us, I think we could get any one of the top 4 seeds, quite
Yeah.
simply.
Like, hypothetically, I just look at the roster and I'm like, that is such a good roster. If everyone's fit, we could do, like, you've got Bonin now, who you've mentioned, who is improving, who I'm so excited about. You've got Paul George, who is not the Paul George of old, but he's going to put up points if fit. You've got Embiid, a former MVP, if fit. And then you just keep saying if, and it starts to throw you off. But you look at the roster and you're like, we could genuinely do something this year. But
Yeah.
again, firstly, it's down to your competitors. And secondly, it's down to if you can stay healthy. So I guess that's the next question. We're going to talk about the biggest competitors in the Eastern Conference. For me, it's out of 2 teams. But for you personally, who do you think could clinch it or should clinch the first seed this year?
I think it's the Knicks. I think it is the Knicks. I think the Cavs will probably get the 1 seed because they're a good regular season team. But the problem the Cavs have for me is, and they don't strike the fear of God into me. I would feel if we had a 7-game series where we're still, even when we have a few injuries where people are a bit 50-50, I'd be like, you know what? We could still beat them. I think they've looked to try and improve themselves. I like how they got DeAndre Hunter at the tail end of last year. I think that was a good signing. But, you know, Garland, I mean, Mitchell's great. Garland and Mitchell as a backcourt, I don't think works, but that would lead me to think that they probably will make a trade. But yeah, they don't scare me. And I think Mobley and Allen as a project works in the regular season, doesn't work in the postseason. So I would have them in the top seed, but I don't think they'll get to the conference finals. I don't feel. The Knicks should get to the conference finals. They got just a brilliant side, made better by Gershon Yabusele.
Yeah.
Much to our dismay.
Sick.
That was a real tearjerker, that one. Because you can't really force yourself to hate him just yet.
No, he's just such a
I
nice
still like
guy,
him.
isn't he?
Yeah, I feel like he would have stayed. And I feel like this is the malpractice we've been talking about. He probably would have stayed. He would have wanted to stay. but things happened. But yeah, I digress. But they've got a good team. They've got a really good team. We'll have to see how Coach Brown gets on,
Yeah.
see what his identity is. But he did very well with the Kings. And when you consider where the Kings were before, that's pretty good going. He got Sabonis and Fox playing out of their minds. And when, again, Sabonis was one of those perennial all-stars, and now you sort of like, okay, he's actually pretty darn good. And beyond that, I mean, I think the Celtics will still be respectable, but I don't think they'll be a threat. I think the Pacers will still be respectable, but I don't think they'll be a threat. The Bucks are, Giannis is so good he could carry them. He's one of those 5 players who is the best player on a championship team. He's that good. And I'm not entirely sure I'm the biggest fan of some of their moves, but they're the semi-effective players, but they haven't got Brook Lopez anymore, and he was a bit of the bane of our life a lot of the time, low-key, whenever we played them. Dame's obviously gone. So Giannis has an awful lot of work to do, but he can do it because he plays all the time as well. The longevity that guy has and his durability is quite incredible. So I think he'll be the Knicks definitely in the conference finals, and I can see a random team cropping up there that could be the Bucks, and I think genuinely that could be us, if everything sort of falls into place quite nicely for us. But if I'm being honest, the Magic, I think Knicks Magic as the conference finals would be awesome. I think they look great. Bane, Wagner, Banchero, Suggs, Carter. That is such an interesting team. So much height, so much size.
My next question was, we'll stay on the Knicks for a little bit. My next question was going to be my pick for the team to watch, so it was more of like a statement. Orlando Magic was actually that team, because I look at their roster now and I'm like, that's where Tyus Jones has gone. I've got it wrote here. Orlando Magic, Tyus Jones, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bain, Franz Wagner, Banchero. It's one of them rosters, and you look, and they're a team every year, and I think I see the same about Cleveland every year. I'm pretty similar with you, because I'm in Knicks and Cleveland for the top spot. I look at Cleveland and I go every year, I'm like, I just don't fancy them. I'm the same about Garland as you are. I love Donovan Mitchell. I really think he's a great player, great to watch. Next to him, I don't think much of Garland. And then last year, he totally proved us wrong, where he kind of had that great regular season. Whereas I watched him the year before, and he's another one that picks up injuries. He drops in and out of games, but last year he was more consistent. And then I look at Evan Mobley, he's something I think we could do similar with Boner with, where you stick him in the 4 and stretches the game a bit more, and then he can cut when you need to and grab rebounds. Do I think Boner's good enough for that yet? But probably he's not, because he's very prone to fouling.
Yeah.
But when you look at the Knicks roster as well, I think you're right. I think they'll take the top spot, because if you look at the additions they've made as well, you've mentioned Brogdon, you've got Clarkson who's went there as well. These are players you just think, and again, we'll keep reverting back to the Sixers, and I shouldn't, but they're players you think, if the Knicks can pick them up with their salary cap situation, not that I'm an expert, but I look and I think they've got Cat, they've got Brunson, they've got Bridges, they've got Anunoby. I think Hart's got a decent contract, and you look and you think, how are they fitting all these pieces in? Are they taking a risk with the salary cap? Can they get to the second year? But I don't know, but I think I just can't look past the Knicks, and it pains us to see it.
It's horrible, isn't it? I mean, I think the Knicks have the same luxury that the Celtics and indeed the Lakers have, and probably to a degree the Heat, is that people will take pay cuts to go because it's a nice way of living. I mean, it's hard, it's not a difficult lifestyle to sell to your family, is it? Oh, by the way, we're moving to Manhattan.
No, it's not bad, is it?
They must, I always think, with NBA families, they must have to give up so much, especially if perhaps you're living in areas which aren't the best. And then if you can reward them with living in Los Angeles or New York or Miami, you'll take the pay cut, because the assumption would be you've already made silly amounts. So I think they just have that advantage, which is frustrating, but such is the way. But yeah, I think you're absolutely bang on about the Magic. I don't know why there's been no rumors about this, but I can see it. I can see them maybe trading for Vucevic back from the Bulls, so he goes back to the Magic.
Well, I quite like that move, actually. That's a good little shout, Pat.
And then I think he's only got 1 year left. The Bulls should really be hitting the reset button. He's obviously good. He likes the Magic like him. I think that'll be a very nice move. It gives them an extra bit of spacing, because Banchero and Wagner aren't the best. They're not terrible, but they aren't the best. So I can see that move, and that will probably take them even further over. And I guess one last team, which I just remembered simply because they're so easy to forget, Detroit. I
Another one I
think
was
they're
going
going
to
to be
pick. Another one I
interesting.
was going to mention. I think that. What do you think of Detroit? I watched them last year, and I'm like, there's a team here. You look at Kate Cunningham, and you look at it, and you just think. I know they're missing. Is it Malik Beasley they're going to be missing this year because of
Yeah,
his
yeah,
problems?
yeah.
I don't know where he's going to land, and he was a
He's
big
still
part of
technically
them.
a free agent, so if he gets innocent, I'm all over get him in.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's a great player.
Yeah, but we got to make sure he's innocent first.
So what do you think of Detroit then? If you look at their roster now and you look at Kate Cunningham, do you think they could really kick on and obviously maybe not
Mm.
get top seed, but do you think they could be top 4 seed there?
Yeah, absolutely. They got a Cade, obviously, Jaden Ivey, really good sort of two guard, but he plays bigger than what he is. You got one of the Thompson twins, who's again a very solid three. And then they have Duran and Isaiah Stewart. And as a center rotation, you're not going to find too many better. Like Duran's better, but like Stewart is such a decent backup to
And he's
have. And they're all
nasty as
just,
well, isn't he? He's really
they got a
nasty
bit
when he
of
plays.
bad boys mentality, just a bit mental. I was thinking, when the Suns were in a bit of disarray, I was thinking like, oh, you know what? If Booker with Cade Cunningham as a backcourt would have been interesting, but that never quite came to fruition. And the Suns are just doing whatever the hell they're doing. So yeah, I do think Detroit can be a really interesting team as well. So actually, you go through it, it's kind of wide open. You can never really write off the Heat. I mean, they don't scare me, but I mean, actually they do, because you think actually that what the Heat do is they make it so the sum of the parts is greater than the value of the individual. So somehow they just do brilliantly. So they're never a team you want to actually face in the postseason. So you'll have to see what they do. But
They're actually, out of every team in the league, I think they're the team that, I'm not going to use the word hate because I don't hate them, but I find them so frustrating, where, say, let's talk about Stoke City back in the day in the Premier League, where they've got this mentality of just working so hard and they make a big thing of it. It's Heat culture. We work so hard here. That's what we do. Jimmy Butler, he's going to come alive in playoffs. And I'm like, oh, God, shut up. Just please
the thing
stop.
is, they don't even need to have that culture. Like Stoke culture is sort of like, well, they're not a rich team, and it's Stoke, respectfully. Miami's lovely. Like people don't need an excuse to move there. Just pay some players.
Exactly.
That's what the fault of Pat Riley. He could have got Lillard, and I think there were some rumblings with other free agents as well. But they were just, beating around the bush too much, not just jumping in and saying, right, we'll bring you in. So they're sort of victims of their own arrogance to a degree.
Yeah.
But, you can never really write them off. I do feel as well, everyone started talking about them after free agency. The Hawks, I don't see it. Porzingis is your second best player, as good as he is. If you say Porzingis is 100% healthy, I might start thinking differently. But the Hawks, Shea, fine, he's great. Trey, of course, brilliant. No, I don't think the Hawks are anywhere near as threatening as some people are suggesting.
I don't think so, and it's just because I think you've kind of highlighted, I think, if Porzingis stays fit, Shea is a very good player, and if you're playing alongside Trey Young, who is probably, for me, I don't know how much substance he's got because we've not seen him in a real team, but he's, for watching, maybe not ability, or maybe even ability-wise, in the East, top 3 guards. I just love watching him play. He can pass, he can score. You watch him in the All-Star game, he's putting it through people's legs, and you're like, this is a player who should be in a better team. Like, say the Lakers, before Doncic went there, he's just a player that's crying out for, like, a big franchise. But looking at the Hawks as a whole, especially after they got rid of Hunter to Cleveland, I don't see them as a threat either. But then again, that's what people might say about the Sixers. Like, you just don't know. But I think the Hawks are a playing team for me. I'd be surprised, much like the Heat. I think if they go above the play-in, they've done very well. And then they get the playoffs, and I can't see them. If games go to 7 games, if you're going for a 7-game series, you're not going to have Porzingis for 7 games. Or if you are, he's not going to last the rest of the run. So it's a weird one. I don't think the Hawks are going to challenge.
No, I think, people got very high on them, and I think they're high on them because they're going to be an entertaining watch, but I don't think they're going to be a team that will make serious damage.
Yeah, and if we look at the Celtics as well, because I still think I look at their roster again, and I look who they've got. They've got Derek White still. They've got Jaylen Brown. They've acquired Anthony Simons, who I actually think is a really good pickup from Portland. I think that's a really good one.
He's going to do well. I think he's going to do very well.
Yeah, I think he kind of suits that. And then you look and you've got Peyton Pritchard, who was in line to start, who was... That's going to be my question after this, because I'm really intrigued to think what you think of Peyton Pritchard. Shout out to Amari Williams as well, British talent, who's now at the Celtics centre. I
Yeah,
don't think he's going to get many minutes, but I'll be interested to see what happens.
you
For
got to
you,
be
when you
happy
look
with that.
at the Celtics and you've got Peyton Pritchard starting, what is a good season for them? I think I can see Jason Tatum come back to the near the end. I don't know, Achilles injuries, they're a bit sore to get over. But I think we've already seen Tatum's back on the court, and it feels like he's got the mentality to come back and be back in time. And
Yeah.
Joe Mazzulla will probably play him with one leg because he is a downright psychopath, let's be honest about it. You see him on the sideline. So if Pritchard starts in the one, where do you think this team can go?
Well, I think Pritchard, again, naturally we're programmed to hate the Celtics, but he's not one of those players I actually seem to hate. I'm sort of just like, you know what, fair enough. Even when he does well against them, he's just sort of like, all right, you know what, you can't begrudge it. I think he's probably going to be up there in terms of 18 sort of points per game. Maybe he gets a most improved player award, something like that, but he can do really, really well. Anthony Simons, he's got a lot to prove. I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be on the Celtics for a foreseeable amount of time, but it's going to be an audition for a larger contract and a larger role elsewhere. Derek White is just the ultimate role player. Yeah, and I mean that in the most like complimentary way possible. And I think because of the culture they've built, because of people like Derek White, I think, yeah, they'll probably get playoffs. So they will have a postseason. How far they go into that, I don't know. Tatum, I can see him recovering, like what you're saying. I think it'll be interesting. I think the big question is where can Jaylen Brown take this team? I think that's probably the question here because I don't know how to feel about Jaylen Brown. I never really have. He can put up 50, then 13. And that's always been the issue. I don't know if he's a good 3-point shooter or if he's a bad one or if he's an average one. And I mean that because I've seen all 3 games happen against us when he's playing. So I do wonder, what he's going to do because he has to step up. But equally, like, what's their front court like going to be like, particularly at the 5? Al Horford's gone. Porzingis is obviously gone. So it's going to be really intriguing to see how they deal with that because, I mean, again, Horford's someone you kind of have to loathe as a Sixers fan. He did a lot of very heavy lifting with the Celtics. And again, I think he's a culture guy. He's a locker room guy. So they've got to figure out how you replace something which is essentially irreplaceable. Not his on-court stuff. It's the stuff off-court, the leadership, the fact that he's been there for the best part of a decade. And I know you can, he did move, but then came back. So it will be interesting to see how they get on. But I think they'll have a postseason in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I think the postseason does ride on Tatum because I think he gets a lot of unfair stick as well. I feel when you watch Tatum play, I watch him and he's always scoring points, he's grabbing rebounds, he's getting assists. I don't get, and he's won a championship at his age. He's had a few conference finals, he's been to the NBA finals. I really can't understand why he gets so much stick for what he does. I don't know if it's maybe because you want him on your franchise or not, or maybe he's just not a likable player. I don't know. But I look at him and I just don't understand why he gets so much hate.
I think that's multifaceted. So Jason Tatum, the player, is brilliant. I'm sure Jason Tatum, the person, is also brilliant. Let's be honest, I don't know the guy, and I've seen nothing to suggest that he's not a nice person. But the only reason I don't really like him, I guess it's multiple, is obviously he does well against us. He'll do terribly for 3.5 quarters, and he'll just turn it on and win. And that's really annoying. And it's always against us, it feels.
Always.
He'll do terribly against anyone else, but when it's against us, it's just he's always going to turn it on and do something brilliant. I think the other thing as well, for me at least, is obviously you've got the draft issues with Fultz. I know everyone puts a bit of hindsight onto that, and it's like, well, actually, hang on. Everyone thought Fultz was unanimous #1 picks. We've just got really unlucky. It's not like, oh, we should have picked Tatum. Well, hindsight tells you that, yeah, but everyone said go with Fultz. So I don't really like that argument, but there's always that link there. But I think for me, the reason why I find him a bit annoying, and this is really petty, is I hate how ever since his kid was born, Deuce, he just parades him in front of every camera. And like, we're trying to we're trying to watch an NBA game or we're trying to do some analysis. And there's like, and here's Deuce shooting at halftime. It's like, I just don't care. So I really don't care. And like, the kid's actually really old now. And it's kind of crazy because it feels like you remember when he was like this big. But like, it's the fact that it's everywhere all the time. And it's just like, I'll give it a rest.
Do you know what it is? I have never noticed that, and I can guarantee now, first game of the season, I'll see him about 7 times, and now you got to make us a note. I've never actually noticed it.
I know it's so petty, but like I said, I'm sure he himself is a nice bloke. He's a great basketball player. This is just a little petty gripe I've got.
Well, there we go. Apparently, this podcast now hates Jason Tatum's child, so that's an unusual turn.
Feel free to have me on any time.
Well, luckily, that's the end of the podcast, guys. No, we're going to end with one where it's an Eastern Conference best 5 we're going to pick, Ben. Right? And it doesn't have to be the best players in the league or in the conference. It can be your favourite players. It can be who you think complements each other.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick anyone you want. For example, I've gone, and like I said about Trae Young, top 3 favourite for me. So I've gone Trae Young in the point, Donovan Mitchell shooting guard. I've gone for Evan Mobley because I love how gangly he is at power forward. I've got Giannis Antetokounmpo in small forward and Embiid, of course, in centre.
Okay.
So like I say, Evan Mobley probably doesn't fit there, but I find him funny. So I'm going to throw him straight in.
Right. So immediately, the one that springs to head at the point is someone I have mentioned on this pod because I just think he is the perfect role player in any championship team. That's going to be Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
I just think, and this is obviously assuming he is the Lonzo Ball of old. He's like the East Alex Caruso. I just think that is the perfect guy. So Lonzo Ball would be great. If I flipped it to other people who I know I definitely want, Embiid, of course, at the center, easy. This might also sound a bit odd, but again, this is assuming you get the best of. I'd want Paul George.
All right.
Because if I get the best of, I get one of the best 3-and-D players you've got that can score on 3 levels. That's assuming I'm getting the best of.
We're going to assume that.
Then, yeah. At the 4, I put Giannis. Then at the 2, who am I going to have at the 2? Just thinking through those teams. I do quite like Desmond Bane.
Yeah.
And I think the whole way through that, then I've just got size. I've got defending. I've got shooting. Well, Giannis isn't a shooter, but I can live with him taking a shot. So I would like that team. That is the team that I could sort of go to war with. I've sort of based it off of, right, if I could make a championship team, that's what I'll go with. If I had to play it more realistically, I think I'd have to swap out PG and probably Lonzo and Embiid. So I'd probably have to change an awful lot of that. But assuming all of these were fit, raring to go, and I was going to get their last good season that they had in the NBA, then yeah, that would win me a championship easily.
Well, you look at the teams that win the NBA now, it's not always the best players, it's the ones that can fit the roles perfectly. And again, fit. So maybe you're right. Maybe Embiid and Paul George might get tipped out of that squad quite quickly. But for now, let's just pretend they're going to be fully healthy all year and the Sixers are going to win a championship.
Oh, I can do that.
Yeah. Well, Ben, it's been a delight. I've enjoyed chatting with you. It's gone really quickly, actually. Apart from me mishap with
really
a bloody light halfway through, but we'll live with that.
No, it's been really, really good fun. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, fingers crossed we can get you back on halfway through the season when we're flying high in the Eastern Conference, eh?
Oh, yeah, easy.
Right, well, everyone, this is the first of 2 episodes. We're going to get a Western Conference preview next week. Me knowledge about them maybe isn't as good as the Sixers, but we're going to certainly try our hardest. And we've also got a bonus episode next week with an NCAA assistant coach, so please tune in for that one. Thank you very much, guys, and this is the Brits Don't Jump podcast.